welcome to this FPL Experts Mistakes to Avoid video with me, Holly Shand. The team that these guys managed finished in the top 10k last season, so there's lots to be learned. Let me know in the comments which FPL mistake you're looking to avoid this season and help me get this one to 500 likes and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. So I asked the FPL experts their biggest mistake to avoid this season, and the thing that came out on top in a third of responses was don't take unnecessary hits. Remember, FPL is a game where we're trying to accrue as many points as possible, and every time you take a hit, that's going to knock off 4 points. So the thing that I liked most was this response from FPLI, who is 3 consecutive finishes in the top 100k, so a manager really worth looking at for his advice. Says, I'd avoid taking unnecessary hits. If you don't captain that player, most of the time I'd recommend to avoid taking him for a hit. And this is something that I tend to follow in my own FPL thinking as well. Sometimes there's just a player that's too good a captain pick that you can't not own, and at that point it's fine to bring them in and captain them, because that 4-point hit is going to be repaid back even quicker if you captain them and they do deliver a return. But on the whole, hits don't generally pay off. If you look at the best performing managers in the world, they tend to play the most conservative, taking a nice measured approach and not making wild changes week in and week out. And the fact that a third of our experts have recommended that same piece of advice means that it's one that you really should take on board. The second piece of advice, and probably the easiest thing to do this season to make sure that you're having a successful season, is to not miss the FPL deadline. This comes from FPL Roo, who's got a great YouTube channel. You should check him out as well. It's just simple. Don't miss the deadline. Now, there's all sorts of ways you can manage this so that you don't miss the deadline. If you've got the FPL app, that will send you notifications that it's 2 hours to deadline. You can also sync up the fixtures with your calendar, set alarms in your phone, whatever you need to do. Another good piece of advice is to set a bus team at the start of the week. I think this phrase was coined by FPL, the Always Cheating FPL podcast. And it's essentially, if you get hit by a bus and you end up not being able to set your team, at least you've set your bus team. So, you know, put the players on the pitch that you want, those on the bench that you want, put that preliminary captain choice in, and then when you go in later in the week, you can obviously make your transfers, refine things as well. But yeah, it's the basics. But you see so many managers that miss a deadline earlier on in the season and think, oh well, there's no point now, and absolutely drop off and just stop playing altogether. So, you know, it really is so important. It's an obvious thing to say, but it is a mistake that you really must avoid. The third mistake to avoid comes in from FPL Plug, a great account on TikTok. Make sure you're following him. 23k finished last season. Don't book in transfers, as you'll probably find another issue in your team by the next game week. And this is one that I see a lot of managers at the start of the season saying, I'm going to start game week 1 with this player, then game week 2 I'm going to bring in this player, game week 3 I'm going to bring in this player. If it was easy as that, we'd all be doing it. But there's so much stuff that we can't advocate for that comes up in the course of an FPL season. We saw such a high number of injuries last season because the games were that much longer, because of how the stoppage time was accrued. The schedule isn't getting any less forgiving, so it's going to be a common theme. You've also got booking suspensions. Certainly in the first 3 game weeks of the season, the transfer window is still open. So it could be that you've got a player in your team that gets transferred to another team, which can change his appeal. Could be that a player comes in that challenges a player that you've got in your FPL team for their place. There's so many variables in play, certainly at the start of the season, which means booking in transfers often isn't a thing, because you'll find that players in your game week 1 team won't start for whatever reason, and then you'll be on the back foot trying to sort out those issues, and you won't be able to do the transfer that you booked in. The fourth piece of advice comes in from FPL Prem Tipster, who's got an enviable record over the last 5 seasons, which puts him 57th in the world rankings over the last 5 seasons, and it's about player ownership. And this is something that I see time and time again. And he said, if your goal is to maximise your points, ignore ownership in your decisions. Ownership has no relevance to point scoring, so when you apply any weighting to it, you are reducing your projected points. See it as a bonus when your player happens to be a differential. Now, those managers that are engaged in FPL tend to get bogged down in all this discussion about ownership, and they really need to look at the bigger picture. You're trying to pick the players that are going to score you the most points. Now, there is a counter argument to this. Generally, those players that are highly owned for a reason. The template is there because everyone is on a similar thinking that these are the best players. But if you've got a player that you expect is going to do well, don't be put off by buying them because they're low owned. If you've found a good strategy for picking players, stick to that and play your own game. Now, I've indulged myself by bringing myself in for the last piece of advice, but this is something that I learned from managing the experts team last season that finished top 10k, and that's don't overthink it. And it's quite simple. Last season, I sent out the poll for the experts team early in the week, made the transfers on Thursday, and I picked the majority decision. So it was obviously going with the obvious decision every single game week, following the herd with captaincy, consistently making transfers on a Thursday. It flabbergasted me how well this team did. It did not react to any Thursday night fixtures. It did not react to any Friday press conferences. It did not react to any Saturday team leaks. And it still finished top 10k. It's something that I will still put heavily in my decision making is the information that we receive on a Friday or Saturday, because I feel like it gives me the full picture to make the best decisions. But the experts team have proven that that isn't necessary. So that's a really important one to bear in mind. I still can't believe how well the experts team did last season without having that full picture, but it just goes to show it doesn't have to be that important. Now, if you found this one useful, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 35k subs by game week 1, and let me know in the comments which mistake you've made in the past that you're going to avoid in the 2024-25 FPL season. Thank you for watching.